morning, and welcome to this week's Monday morning message. I'm Lady Black coming to you from the abode, and I want to welcome you to October. It's really cold outside this morning. I even have on my Jackson hoodie from high school that I keep just for around the house to keep warm. I hope this day greets you with love, light, and life, with peace, balance, and blessings, with power and prosperity. And today's Monday morning message is surrender. Surrender. To cease resistance to an enemy or opponent and submit to their authority. To yield. To submit. To relent. To give up. Surrender. I would like to redefine surrender just slightly, because surrender is not solely when you are giving resistance to an enemy or opponent. It's not only when you submit to another's authority. Quite often, surrender is simply letting go. Some of us may have feelings about letting go, or feelings about giving up something or someone, or an instance where you feel like when you give up, you're giving up a part of yourself. The act of surrender is something that we human beings, or maybe something that we Americans do not do very well. I think the act of surrender is something that is definitely culturally frowned upon. We're taught to fight. We're taught to fight to the very end. So I ask you, what or who do you surrender to? When do you give up? I can hear grumbling from here. I don't surrender to nobody. I know you're grumbling and your ego, because I too have grumbled at the suggestion that I give up anything, any part of myself, that I give up in any fight. I grumble at that idea, but I've learned better. I've definitely had the experience to have learned better, and I can describe my surrender story as one that I fought hard against. I've spent the better part of the last decade fighting a health condition, and at one point I was in the hospital. Actually, it was probably the fourth time that I was in the hospital with internal bleeding, and the ordeal was arduous. It was harrowing. I really saw life slipping through my fingers. And there was a point where I was on the hospital bed, and everyone was surrounding me trying to make sure that I didn't die. And my blood pressure had dropped to 69/29 or something crazy like that. And in that moment, my mother walked in the room, and I just knew that it was a shocking sight for her to see me and all of this going on around me and hold it together. And in that moment, she walked over to me and she said to me, "Everything's going to be all right." And it was in that moment that I quite literally let go of myself. I let go of her. And I knew she had to let go of me too. I let go of my hold on life. I let go of my husband. my dreams, my family. I had to let go. I had to surrender in that moment because that was the only thing that allowed me to live through that moment. That was the only option that I had. I had no control over the situation. I had no way to take charge. I wasn't in charge. I wasn't supposed to be in charge. Surrender in that moment and in every moment since has brought me nothing but peace and understanding. So today, I'm focusing on surrender because it is my hope for you to also find peace and understanding in that surrender that I encourage. Some of us, me included, have had, like I said, an experience that taught us to surrender. Some of you have had that experience, taught us why to surrender. Some of us may answer the question of who to surrender to by saying God. I surrender to God. Others may surrender to their parents or children or spouses. But surrender isn't every day, and it's not all the time. Nothing is every day and all the time. But just like that fight that you put up when asked, when do you give up? Or that fight you have in your spirit to survive, surrender is a necessary tool for survival too. My surrender taught me that. But there are much simpler situations in which the act of surrender would help rather than harm you. Some of us were born with or were nurtured into having a fight in our belly for survival. There will come a time when this fight is not needed, but we use it anyway because we are conditioned toward it. Like the time in the supermarket when the clerk had an attitude, or that moment on the street when that passerby bumped into you. There are big situations and small situations that are surrender worthy. A part of adulthood is knowing when that is and applying it. Lord knows, and all my family knows, and all my friends know that I've been a fighter, defending myself against every adversary, real or imagined, against mental, physical, and tangible opponents. And yes, most of the time, we are fighting with ourselves, beating ourselves up in our head for doing this or not doing that, or for being so this or not being enough of that. Think about all the times in your life you've fought an unnecessary fight. The act of surrender can bring peace to your most anger-inducing, frustrating, painful, and hate-filled situations in life. Because whether you win or lose a fight, and whether it's real or imagined, whether it's a real or imagined enemy, or whether you are fighting with yourself or someone else, you will walk away with anger, hatred, pain, and frustration. The act of fighting breeds these emotions. And I'm not saying the fight is never worth it. What I'm saying to you is evaluate. Determine if the situation is worth the fighting. If you believe it to be worth the fight, evaluate again. Ask yourself, is it worth dying for? Because if it's not worth dying for, then it might not be worth the fight. Note, every fight can end in death. Whether that death be immediate due to violence or slow due to the continual expression and feelings of anger, hate, frustration, and pain that fills the body and creates disease. Surrender is the act of letting go. Surrender does not mean defeat. Surrender is preservation. Imagine the power you give up when you fight an unnecessary fight. The energy you spend fighting even when the fight is done, reliving the fight over and over again in your mind. Surrender allows you to redirect that energy towards peace and understanding. Fighting can be for survival, but too often fighting is for ego. You can't beat me. Surrender is strategic. Surrender is allowing the force that is against you to pass you by, leaving you standing when it's done. It means I will bend with the wind like a tree that survives a storm. You wonder how that one tree remains standing when all the trees around it are broken or pulled from its roots. That tree surrendered to the will of the storm. That tree let go and let God. It made the strategic decision not to fight. And in that, it found peace and life. Today, I encourage you to be like the tree that bends and lives. Learn how, when, and why to surrender. This has been your Monday morning message. I hope you have a wonderful, powerful, and great day, week, and life.